Welcome to the show, guys. We are talking contract year players for 2023. And why is that important? Well, I mean, it was last year. You got some value with guys like Jacobs and Saquon, for example. So we're going to talk about guys that are primed to boom this year, predicated on the contract year. And I've got a special guest here. I'm going to try to get him on the show a little bit more. Jimmy Maverick, who's a draftician, statistician. He's got many titles. He's a passionate guy that helped create an app that we're using now, the 16 rounds draft plus tool that you get on the website. He knows his stuff, man, and we're going to dive into contract year players. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Hey, how you doing there, counselor? Great to be here.
Yeah, man, let's have an open discussion here to have some fun here in the offseason. And I think the main thing that we want to discuss here, obviously, is the contract years. But why is it so important? Can you give us a definition on why it's so important, how it was important last year, and why why should we be drafting these players that are in line for a big contract? And can you break it down for us?
Well, think about your regular job, right? You know, when you're in your regular job and your boss says, "Hey, man, if you do a really good job for us this year, if you work really hard, I'll give you an extra 50 cents an hour." And we're supposed to be happy with that. But in the NFL, it's like, "Hey, if you do a really good job, if you really work hard this year, you can make 10 times as much as you're making next year." So there's a huge, huge motivation for players to really perform at an extremely high level. And because of that, on their contract year, because they are playing for that big payday. And you just see it all the time. When you look at the running backs this past year, some of the best running backs in the NFL were contract year players. You got Saquon Barkley, you had Josh Jacobs, but you also had Miles Sanders had a great year. Tony Pollard had a great year. Why? Contract year, man. Those guys are playing for the big payday, and they're going to get it. They'll get a big payday.
There's definitely a little more pep in their step for sure. And this is something that's completely not really talked about on the mainstream level. I mean, they kind of hint at it, but when you look at the consensus rankings, they're really copying and pasting them. So guys like Saquon, even though he was due, right? Even though we knew the contract year was there, you and I did, and our draft tool did, and the 60-round draft solution did. And I talked about it on the podcast. He was still outside the top 10 on pretty much all ranking coming off in the second round last year. Same with Jacobs, completely not even talked about, right? So
yeah, he was like, what, 8th round pick last year? Crazy value value if you took him.
And this is the difference with this channel and the draft tool that Jim's created, and you can get it under programs at thefantasyfootballaccounts.com. You can pre-order now. Is that we think outside the box, and that's really the difference maker. So let's have an open discussion about this, Jim. Let's go over the list of players that are due for a contract and the guys that we should maybe keep on our radar. Now, again, can you break down some of these players? Which ones do we want to focus? Not so much the guys that are going for their second contract so much, but it's more like the guys coming out of their rookie year, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking guys that are going for their third or fourth contract, we're talking guys in the age range of Ezekiel Elliott and guys that are either right at the peak of their career or even on the decline. I'm not worried about those. What I want is guys coming off their rookie contracts. So we're talking players that have been in the league for anywhere from 3 to 5 seasons at this point. And so you've got the youth and you got the upside. That's two big parts of the Cuddy system. That's why I like them so much.
Yeah, and you're going to get a Cuddy score in the draft tool this year. It's going to give you guys all the optimal players drafting each round, including my recommendations, all laid out for you. So yeah, let's go over a list here. I'll give you my input on it, and who's really primed for like a boom type of year and needs to do something this year so they get paid that big contract.
Right. And well, let's start with the quarterbacks. All right. So we do have some big names on quarterbacks. The biggest name is Jalen Hurts, but frankly, he's going to get extended. He will get his big payday. It's probably a done deal. But I'd say the biggest names you want to look at for contract year quarterbacks would be Joe Burrow, who is entering year 4. Justin Herbert, I believe he's also at year 4. And if you want to go long shot, how about Tua? Tua is also kind of primed. He's in a really good offense. If he can stay healthy, which players are much better at staying healthy in a contract year, happens all the time. I think he's worth a long shot as well.
Yeah, and these guys are relatively minus 2 with the injuries. They're relatively consistent guys from a fantasy perspective. So we're not going to see a huge spike necessarily because these guys are pretty much performing on top level. You know, you had Tua get hurt last year. You know, Herbert could have performed better for fantasy last year. And again, I don't want to make excuses for the guy, but his receiving core was banged up. A lot of checkdowns to Eckler, which will change this year. And then that's a whole other topic when we're talking.
Right.
I'm not sold on Eckler this year. That's a whole other discussion. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that's good. So those are the main 4 quarterbacks. But again, we're not going to see a huge necessarily leap. Maybe just some slight improvement, especially for Herbert and Tua potentially.
Well, yeah, but again, the upside I think is there. I mean, clearly when Tua was healthy, and he's got 2 amazing receivers, the dude was balling out. He was going crazy. The issue with him is, can he stay healthy? And his motivation to stay healthy this year is going to be extremely high because he knows what that payday is. He knows that if you are a franchise quarterback, 45 to $50 million a year is your payday. I mean,
Yeah.
it is enormous. I mean, when you look at like the mediocre quarterbacks so far this season that have gotten a big payday, including Daniel Jones and Derek Carr, those guys are both at one's at like 37.5 million, one's at $40 million a year. Those guys are just average at best. They're average at best quarterbacks that
Yes.
got that payday. So if he can be like a QB1, if he can say, okay, look at me, look at how I did. I'm a QB1, $50 million a year. That's what he's playing for. So
It
he's
shows
got
you the
motivation.
market, how desperate they are for anyone that can actually just sling the ball a little bit just downfield. I mean, look at Derek Carr. We're looking at what do you get, 3 or 4 million? What is it? $100 million guaranteed, $150 million contract. Was it 3 or 4 years, something like that?
Yeah,
I don't know
4
what it was.
years. Yeah,
4 years.
$37.5 million a year. I mean, it's
For a guy that has not, and I repeat this, and I want to just, I don't know how to, like, it frustrates me. Not 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 years, right? Like, fool me once, shame on me, right? Remember that old saying, right? It's
yes,
like,
yes,
okay, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, I get it. He hasn't made the playoffs, right? Or he's made the playoffs. He's had, I think, 2 playoff appearances, whatever, but no playoff wins. Okay, no playoff wins in 1, 2, 3 years, 4, 5, 6 years. This guy's not getting us he's not winning a playoff game. 7, 8 years, but 9 years, 0 playoff wins.
right.
And to think that another team would think that he's a franchise worthy quarterback and pay him such a substantial amount of money, it's just ludicrous and absolutely mind blowing. I've never seen anything like it. The delusion of the Saints. It's crazy, crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and they've hitched their wagon to Derek Carr for the next 4 years. So it's like, he couldn't do it with Devontae Adams,
No,
and Frank, actually, I wanted to ask you what you think about Chris Olave now. I mean,
yep.
clearly Derek Carr is better than
Dalton,
Dalton.
Dalton.
Yeah, he's better than Dalton, and he can produce QB1s. I mean, he got 1,500 yards to Devontae Adams last year. So how do you think do
I'm
you
loving
like?
Olave. I'm loving Olave, and that's
Yeah,
the thing, right? I'm not a Derek Carr fan, but he is serviceable enough to make players fantasy relevant. Olave's a young, hungry player, and they both need that oomph, kind of like he just got paid. He's got to prove himself, right? He's got a chip on
right.
his shoulder. So I like that connection. I'm not sure what's going on with Michael Thomas. I'm not really excited about him, but either way, Olave is going to be the one there. Michael Thomas just kind of fell off. So,
Yeah,
but anyway, we're getting off on a tangent here. We could talk about this all day. So let's
sure.
just go back to. So those are the quarterbacks. Do you want to move on to
Yeah,
another position, or is there anyone else we
yeah.
should be looking at?
Let's talk running backs. How about that?
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, so the biggest name, the biggest contract year player name for running backs this year is Jonathan Taylor.
Okay.
And he's coming off a bad year. No question. He has a bad year. Chances are they're going to get a rookie quarterback in there, which is also not great, but the fact is that means that JT is going to be the centerpiece of that offense on a contract year, playing for his career, same way that Saquon was last year. So I really like Jonathan Taylor, guy going at the end of the first round. This guy you can get like maybe pick 10, 8, 10, 11, 9, right in that range. And certainly he's a great name. But some other ones that you might want to consider, and these are guys I've been talking about, are the J.K. Dobbins, Cam Akers, and A.J. Dillon. All 3 of these guys are on contract years this year. And I believe that they all have the potential to be this year's Josh Jacobs. I don't know if they can do as well as Josh Jacobs. but they're all in really good situations, and they're, as far as Akers and Dobbins go, 2 years removed from that serious injury they suffered, so they're in good shape. AJ Dillon's paired with an aging running back who's over the age of 28 in the decline phase of his career, so he has a real chance to step up, take over that backfield. All those guys, I think I'm really liking as far as taking a mid-round pick on a running back, because you can get these guys between right now pick 70 to pick 100, right in that range. So, we're talking 7th, 8th, 9th round pick. I love them. I think they're good. I think they're really good.
Again, it goes to the situation where they land, how it's going to pan out. Now, when you got to check some boxes here, Jonathan Taylor, talent check, volume check. Then you got situation around him. We don't know what's going on with the quarterback, like you said, but I love him. But when you look at the other guys, years to wow me, and guess what? I'm not wowed. And it's tough. It's really tough. Like Dylan going to be in a committee again. Yes, they're in a contract year, but there is some hindrances based on the situation. So I got to take a look at the value. I got to take a look at, like, are they going to be my RB2? No. Are they going to be my RB3? Maybe. I got to take a look. Cam Akers screwed a lot of people. Last year, I think he was coming off at the end of the second round. Correct me if I'm wrong. Second, third round. Way too high draft capital, busted. Again, years to wow me, and I'm not wowed. It's a very simple saying when I say that.
Yeah.
It means a lot.
But you also have to understand that Cam Akers was coming off an Achilles injury, which is extremely devastating and hard to recover from.
So I look at him, he's injury prone. Like, he's always getting injured, that guy. Even his rookie years, his ribs, sideline, I think his ribs, held him off pretty much that whole year.
Right.
It's just,
but now, it is the 4th year of his contract. He's playing for his career. He's either going to become like just a backup journeyman, or he's going to show Sean McVay, great offensive head coach, it's still a very good team, that he can in fact carry the load and be the one. Sean McVay has shown that he will utilize a one when available. He's done it in the past. So, I like the situation. Darrell Henderson gone, so there's no competition. I don't know if they're really going to bring anyone in. They might draft somebody, but it's probably going to be a day 3 draft pick. It's going to be Cam Akers' backfield. And so, all the opportunity in the world and the motivation, I'll take a chance. I'll take a chance on a risky player on their contract year, because we've seen so many instances where players who are injury prone, I'm just going to throw a couple names out of there. No Sean Marino. Even Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders totally sucked the first 3 years of his career, but he came out in his contract year and was RB8. That's what I'm talking about. It's like a guy I normally wouldn't take, I'll consider on a contract year. I'll take a chance.
Isn't DeAndre Swift on a contract year as well?
DeAndre Swift is on a contract year, and you've also got a thing where who's the other running back there? Jamal
Williams.
Jamal Williams, yeah. So Jamal Williams is also 28 years old and was really super productive because he got 1 million touchdowns, which is a very fluky thing that can absolutely decline.
What happened to James Conner the year before, and everyone's like, I love James Conner. I'm like, no, that's a fluke year. Be careful.
Yeah. So anyway, DeAndre Swift certainly is a high risk guy. He's still going really high though. Let's see here right now, ADP 53. I don't know if I could take a chance on DeAndre Swift at 53. And I've also heard rumors that Detroit, well, in these little NFL mock drafts, which really don't mean anything, but they're projecting Bijan going to Detroit. And I'm like, if that happens, DeAndre Swift is done.
Bijan. Bijan Robinson's what I'm calling him. But yeah, wherever Bijan ends up, he's going to take over. But the problem is I'm hearing Dallas might want him. And that's going to be an issue with Pollard a little bit. I know he's way better than Pollard on paper, but it's still, I just would hate to see Bijan. I call him Bijan. I would hate to see him go on to a team where he's stuck in a committee, even though he's better out of the two.
But but it's kind of like the same thing as the Jets backfield.
Breece Hall, Michael Carter.
Yeah, Breece Hall is such a level of talent above anyone else. Once he's healthy, he's the back. He's the guy, and I feel that Bijan is that guy. So I guess we got to figure out exactly how he is. What his name is pronounced.
It's actually, he pronounced it Bijan. That's how you pronounce it. But I just go with how it's spelled, Bijan.
Okay.
I look at it like if you got the word bi, okay, bi, right? Okay, if I say bi and I put weekly after, what is that? It's bi-weekly, right?
Yes.
So his name is Bijan, right? By Jan, right? But he's calling it B with a B. I'm not seeing it. But anyway, that's a whole other topic. I did a video on it.
All
So
right.
let's move on. Anyone else that's contract ready here for running back that's really
Well, those are the biggest names, and
okay.
certainly DeAndre Swift is the biggest risk. You've also got and one other name. I just want to throw this out here. Antonio Gibson is also on a contract year this year, and the dude right now his ADP is at 129. So that's 10th round. So I'm like, that seems like a really good 10th round pick for a contract year running back who has been productive, and yeah, Brian Robinson is there, but they've also talked about using Antonio Gibson more as a receiver. So that works too. That gets you lots of production. But
I have no
that's
interest
another
in
one to
Fumbles
consider.
Gibson. I have no interest in Fumbles Gibson at all. So anyway, out of all those guys you said, just an initial thought, we're very early. I'm not feeling warm and fuzzy about anybody except for Taylor. Okay, that's how I'm feeling. Again, very high draft cap. Everyone had Swift top 10 last year. I was like, no, avoid Swift. Years to wow us. We're not wowed. I
Yeah.
think he had peaked at 151 attempts was his max. Not volume guys, not guys that are going to get done. And yeah, so far right now, I got to do some more probing into this, but maybe for value, we'll talk about it,
Yeah, I mean, like I said, where they're going in the draft, I really like him. And we're not talking, I mean, you were talking, where would you be drafting a guy like Cam Akers or AJ Dillon? They'd be your RB4 or 5 if you're doing robust RB. I
Yeah.
mean, so it's like that's a position where it's like, if they work out, great. If they don't, it doesn't really hurt your team.
What I
So,
usually do when I do that is when I'm rolling the dice on robust RB, I'm usually gambling on some rookies with upside. Like last year, Algier was kind of my later guy. So I'd rather have like an Algier upside guy than a guy that's been in the year that hasn't wowed me, even though they're on a
sure.
contract year. But that's a whole other topic and discussion when we explain that in 16 rounds. But let's move on to wide receivers here. And I just want to make you aware. Look at the situation. So we're not just saying contract year, they're going to boom and be like Saquon. That's not what we're saying. We're saying look at the situation. We're just making you aware of these contract year players. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I like the upside they represent
And the
because of the
value.
contract year. But yeah, they don't always work out. Like Damian Harris this past year was also a contract year player, and he did nothing. And Ramondre
Good
took over
sample.
that backfield. And frankly, when a player screws up a contract year, I'm pretty much done with them. I don't want them anymore.
Yes. Good point.
If they can't do it in their contract year, they can't do it. And so I'm just like, I just fade them for the rest of their career.
And you got to
But
note the caliber of Jacobs. He was really good coming in as a rookie, and so was Saquon. These were ultra elite guys coming in. Not to say that Dobbins, these guys aren't, but I just don't think they were on the level of Jacobs and a Saquon. But we'll see. We'll see how it turns out.
yeah. So let's move on to wide receivers. So we have three elite wide receivers that are on contract year this year. So these are guys going in the first 2 rounds. Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. All these guys, elite level talents on a contract year. This is the upside, man. This is what I'm talking about. Like not only a career season, but perhaps an NFL record breaking season. That's the upside that these players offer. All of them are going, well, it's your Amon-Ra is going to pick 14, and that's the latest. So these are like first or early second round picks, which doesn't really go with your style of picking, but just to mention that is out there and they are big. Another big name to consider that going a little bit later is T. Higgins, who is the 2 on Cincinnati, but I'm wondering if they're going to be able to retain him because they've got Joe Burrow on a contract year and they got Jamar Chase, who's going to need to be extended probably after next season. Maybe they got one more out of him there, but he's going to be playing for probably moving to another franchise as a wide receiver 1. So that's another big name that
You gotta be
is.
careful too. Jamar Chase was dealing with some off-field stuff. There was his girlfriend or something, or his baby's mama. I don't know all the details, so I'm not gonna be quoted here. But there was something where I saw a video on her story, which was shared, where she's saying she's got enough information on him to ruin his career. So he's got some off-field drama going on right now. And
That's not
I
good.
don't know. It's something you got to look into. And again, with him and Mixon having all these issues with the law and like, guns and I don't know what's going on, even though he was allegedly, a sound of a gun going off in his house. And I don't know all the details, but it seems like there's some off-field drama with these guys. Mixon, I'm avoiding completely. I think he's definitely past his
Oh,
prime.
yeah, Mixon is trouble right now.
Yeah, I'm done with Mixon. But in regards to Chase, again, he's ultra talented. I think he's the guy. We're gonna have to see what happens with Higgins, where he ends up. He's got like a low end wide receiver one type of talent if the volume is there, but he's always
Right.
gonna kind of be known as the two. And that's kind of the problem with this guy. Like, if you remember the Bears years ago, there was a Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey. At the time, I think Marshall was the one. And then Marshall went away, and there was Alshon Jeffrey. They tried to make Alshon Jeffrey kind of the one. He never was a true one. It happens in so many scenarios where
Right.
the wide receiver one goes, like maybe it was Antonio and Juju as well. Antonio was gone. Juju was never a true one. It's the same case with this. Can Higgins be a true one? I'm not really convinced. Maybe.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing about like Christian Kirk. I don't see him as a one, even though he played as the one this year. Now that Ridley's coming in, I think he's
Yeah.
going back to the slot. He's going to be a two.
That's an exciting offense. I never thought I'd say Jacksonville is actually an offense I will be watching this year.
I really like it. I think you've got Trevor Lawrence going into year 3. That's a big breakout year. They've obviously made the investments, the draft capital, getting really good offensive pieces around him. I think the upside on that whole team is there. Even if none of them are technically in contract year, I think I might put Trevor Lawrence in as a contract year player, even though it's only year 3 for him. But because of the upside, I think he's got tremendous amount of upside.
All right. Any other wide receivers we should keep an eye on, for a potential boom type of year based on contract?
Absolutely. I think Jerry Jeudy is another big upside player. I think he's been proven that he is the one, and now he's on a contract year. You've got Michael Pittman, who is on a contract year, but probably playing with a rookie quarterback, so that's not great. And Marquise Brown is on a contract year as well. We'll see what happens with DeAndre Hopkins. If Hopkins leaves, then he's the one. He's played the one before, so there is some upside there. Although Kyler Murray, who knows when Kyler Murray is going to play again, because he's out for a while. He's going to miss probably at least half of next season. But those are 3 other big names I think need to be out there.
I want to make a point. I'm more intrigued of second-year wide receivers this year than I am of some of the contract players you named there, like a Pittman, Marquise Brown, whatever. Doesn't excite me. Give me a Drake London maybe, or give me a Treylon Burks, or give me a Garrett Wilson. Garrett's going to be a little more expensive, especially if Rodgers ends up in New York. So I'm more interested and intrigued by second-year players with upside here than I am particularly with some of these guys that you mentioned. I just want to make a note of that. I don't know if you're feeling the same way.
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously, I love the second-year players as well. We're talking guys that are on the ascension part of their career. They're
Right.
rising, and the breakout, if it occurs, it can be year 2, it can be year 3, it can be year 4. But like I said, overall, I tend to see these great breakout years on the contract year. So that's why I flagged them.
Right. No, it's good to know. How about moving on to tight ends?
Yeah, tight end. So obviously the biggest name for the tight end on a contract year would be TJ Hockenson, who now with the release of Adam Thielen is the number 2 in for the Vikings. Contract year upside. He was great last year. I think he's really kind of really growing into the role of being an elite tight end 1, a top 3 player.
Yeah.
Certainly love that. Also, let's see here, Cole Kmet of Chicago, who didn't do much this past year. The tight ends is such a wasteland. After Travis Kelce, it's like, okay, and Hockenson and Mark Andrews, it's like there's nobody.
Hawkinson's really appealing. I really like that, especially if Jefferson's drawing a double coverage. It's like Hawkinson all day. You know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
absolutely. The
It's
upside is tremendous. You know,
the rapport.
150 target season on the table for him right
The
now.
rapport is there, the contract is there, the talent is there, the volume will be there. I'm
Mhm.
all over that. Now we're gonna see what other wide receiver they're gonna kind of move up there. They got Osborne there. He's a good player. He's not outstanding, KJ Osborne, but again, it's gonna be interesting to see. This is what makes fantasy football so exciting. It's that uncertainty. It's the kind of subjective view. It's somewhat subjective, but there's also a lot of research and analytics and gut feeling behind it. Some people like criticize me, oh, your gut feeling. No, gut feeling is really good, man. Because last year I'm like, my gut's telling me Cooper Kupp's gonna go down. There might be an injury. Jonathan Taylor coming off a pinnacle year and first overall, not feeling it, right? Sure enough, gut feeling kicked in. Now, a lot of that was gut feeling, common sense, and historical data that shows that it's very unlikely they're going to finish on top again. So accommodate accordingly, right? Whereas you had Henry coming off an injury, bounce back season was due, right? More appealing than Jonathan Taylor last year. Everybody told you Jonathan Taylor, right? So there's a lot
Right.
of research, data, gut feeling, all this incorporated. And again, some of the contract players you mentioned, they're not giving me the warm and fuzzies. The Michael Pittmans, years to wow me. I'm not really wowed. And again, you could say it's quarterback play. If Aaron Rodgers ends up on the Colts, yeah, give me Michael Pittman if they don't draft another wide receiver. So there's a
Right.
lot of variables, a lot of situational awareness, a lot of depth chart analyzing, statistical, historical. So much goes into it. And that's why you guys got to get the draft tool, because a lot of that data, mostly all that data is there. It's just a matter of you putting it together and saying, you know what? Jimmy's laid it out for me and Joe. These are his picks. This guy's on a contract year. This guy's coming off a contract hangover. All that data is there in the app that Jimmy's created. Go in there, dive in, and get the Draft Plus tool, guys, under programs in the 16 round and the 16 round drafts, which you can pre-order them both now at thefantasyfootballcast.com under programs. Jim, is there anything else you want to add? Is there any other tight ends that we should be aware about? Because I really don't trust anybody after Hockenson.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Freiermuth is entering year 3 of his contract. So that's a decent choice. Noah Fant, who's the same draft class as TJ Hockenson, Albert O in Denver. But again, these guys, I mean, I do kind of like Freiermuth. He's actually got really good. Right now, his ADP is about 100. That's a pretty good place to take a tight end. TJ Hockenson going to pick 42. So that would be like, you'd be like taking Hockenson as your wide receiver 1, if you do the robust RB, RB, and then Hockenson. I'm like, oh, that's kind of tough. I don't know if I could do that, but
yeah, I don't know. I gotta see how it plays out. But again, if I get the wide receiver value I want, might be appealing. Like if I see who's available rounds 5 and on, if I could stack and I see there's value at 5, 6, and 7, I can load up my wide receivers and get a potential wide receiver 1 breakout, then I'm in. I got my running backs, tight end is locked in. You still get a top tight end, and then you start, smashing those wide receivers. It's gonna be a good year, man. I just feel it's gonna be a great year. It's gonna be exciting. And by the way, what are you doing in this offseason to keep yourself distracted? I mean, there's no football now.
There's no football, but there is, like I said, I'm just working on the app, putting in the data. I just put in what I like to track for players is I like to track how many seasons they've been on the team, how many seasons they've been in the league, how many seasons they play with their head coach and their offensive coordinator, because that gives me pluses and minuses for players. A player that switches teams gets a little downgrade. A new offensive coordinator gets a little downgrade. It's always, people think like let's say Philly, they lost their OC. If you think they're going to look exactly the same next year as they did this year, they won't. They've got a new offensive coordinator. So it's a little bit more risk on those players. So it's just a little minus on their
Right.
upside, on their outlook, and so this is all part of the upside calculation where, oh yeah, it is a contract year. Oh, but they're playing with a rookie quarterback,
Right.
or it's an upside, it's an upside year. And, they got a new head coach, there's all these different factors that kind of slide that upside up and down. And so that's what I'm working on right now.
Good. I was just talking about more personally. What are you doing? I'm watching 24 the season on Hulu right now. I don't know if you're watching 24, the old Jack Bauer.
I love 24 from back in the day, but actually, I watched History of the World Part 2, which is on Hulu. Pretty funny.
What's it called? History of the World?
History of the World Part 2. I don't know if you remember the movie. It's a Mel Brooks movie from, I don't know, 1979 called History of the World Part 1.
I haven't
Well,
seen
this
that.
is History of the World Part 2, and it's very funny. It's not everything hits, but it's got a lot of these little historical skits, and they're entertaining. So I enjoyed that. It was pretty funny.
Awesome. All right, Jim. Well, thank you. Thanks for being here. Contract year players, approach with caution on some of them, but some of them could absolutely go to the moon. Make sure you guys are subscribed. Pre-order 16 rounds in the draft tool. I'll put the links below. Jimmy, thanks. We're going to have you on more often. The statistician help is very insightful. Thank you, Jim.
I appreciate it, and have a good time out there, everybody. And if you're doing early drafts, let us know what you're seeing. Put it in the comments.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. We'll talk soon. We're out.
All right.